All right.
ahead.
I record it for YouTube.
Okay.
So it goes live now, and then I'll
tuning in for change.
And you're live.
Good morning to the lovely listeners on Kindasound Radio this morning on the Reality Bites show. I'm your host, Wendy Smith, and I have a lovely guest this morning, Craig Barlow. I'm looking forward to this one. Craig, first of all, before I introduce you, thank you for joining me today.
No worries, appreciate the invite.
No worries. And I'm absolutely gutted this morning because Craig's in sunny Ibiza and Django's in the lovely sunny South Africa. And I'm sat here freezing in the UK. So that's all good. But Craig, I've asked Craig on the show this morning because I really wanted to do something a little bit different. And you guys know I love talking, and I love talking to people about their lives. And I find Craig quite fascinating because he runs leadership courses for men, but in a very unique way. And for me, being brought up by a proper man's man, my dad, you know, dad's what I call a proper man. You know, he's in touch with the emotional side of himself of a fashion, but he's very practical. Get on with life, pick yourself up, keep going, stop fannying about. And I love that attitude. And I think sort of I do wonder sometimes, Craig, where the men have gone. But Craig is former military, and he moved into this environment. We're going to find out about this after he changed his career. So yeah, I'm just gonna jump in, Craig. I want to go through your life because I'm fascinated about you.
Ask away.
Yeah, so we normally start the show with like your childhood, basically. So I want to know the early years of Craig.
Okay.
Who was the young Craig, and before you got to Ibiza and went through the military and etc. Like, what were your ideals as a child? Your family background, schooling, that sort of thing?
So my immediate family is like, I was the youngest. I still am the youngest of 3 boys, which basically meant that how are you with swearing on here, by the way?
Minimal.
Okay, because I have to watch.
I know you're similar to my family. The F word is one that
I might have to talk a bit
like
slower to make sure I don't get the F bombs and extra out. But basically, I used to have the crap beat out of me, like as brothers do.
Yeah.
As the youngest is like my there's a lot of boys in my family. Like my dad's like Glaswegian, like comes from like Clydebank, Glasgow. Like is like, again, like a lot of the Celtic was just like just all men basically. So there's a lot of men in our family. And we grew up just outside Leicester, a little town outside Leicester called Hinckley. My dad was around until I was like 10, and then he left when I was 10. So that was like knowing the stuff I know now about, you know, like you talk about like trauma and stuff, is just like where you'd see that as like a normal childhood. Is, you know, nothing bad happened. I didn't get abused or anything like this, but it's just like, you know, in terms of wounds, it's just like the kind of abandonment wound, and like and relationship with dad was like a kind of a big thing for me in childhood and teens. But generally pretty good, you know. It's just like very, very mischievous at school, like didn't connect with school that much. I was like, found it boring, and just like, how can I provoke and wind up the teachers to get reactions and get thrown out, and just a bit of a clown. And yeah, just so naughty, but not like in a really bad way, just naughty and mischievous. Really, that was kind of the basis of my childhood, to be fair. And
with sort of like your parents, were they, you know, disciplinarians? Were they supportive in what you were doing? Was it just sort of like none of that?
My dad was, when he was there before he left, like not in a really harsh way. It was just very, if I look back from my perspective now, he was the kind of one you'd be like, you don't want to kind of cross, but he wouldn't do it in a very kind of dominant, kind of aggressive way. It was just actually very kind of I always found that kind of very grounded in how he would discipline, like very, very smart, very smart in the way that he did that. My mum, bless her, is just like, obviously she was like, had 3 boys to kind of cope with on her own for a long time, so it's like, good luck trying to bring any discipline into the house with that. I think she was a bit too stressed to kind of try and implement that as well. So we were kind of a bit, I would say like a little bit wild.
Did she use the threat of your dad as discipline?
No, not really, because I think because I was like 9 or 10 when he left. So what we used to get the wooden spoon. Is this like for mum? She'd be like, "I'll get the wooden spoon out," but then like it got to a point where we just laugh when she's like, "No."
I think ours was threat of dad. Mum would always say, "I'll tell your father," or
Yeah.
she'd pretend to phone the children's home.
Oh, okay.
So it'd be that she's going to hate me for saying this. But she used to pick up the phone and go, "I've got, hello, yes, have you got room for two? Yes, two really naughty ones." And we'd be going, "No, Mum."
Yeah, please no.
Yeah, trauma points, Craig.
Yeah.
Isn't it? They can abandon you. So
Yeah.
from school then, did you have any idea? Because we're always taught at school, aren't we? You must like decide what you're going to do for a job. I mean, and not really wanting to engage in school. Did you have anything in your head already that you were going to, like, career paths? I want to follow dad's career or uncles, relatives, or
like none of those. It was like the only thing I was really interested at school was geography and cooking. So I was actually like pretty good at cooking at school, like from straight off. I was like, oh, I quite like this. It's like I like food. Is like I'm pretty good at this. Is like I enjoy it. So and like they're the only two classes like I really paid attention to. And in terms of like what I wanted to do is actually, it's like the reason why I ended up joining the Navy was because I watched Under Siege with Steven Seagal when I was like 8 years old. And it was just like, this badass like Navy SEAL chef on a boat, whereas like it gets taken hostage and he saves the day and all this. So it was just like, I loved that. I was just like, it was kind of like one of those subconscious imprints that can kind of happen as just like where I was just like, oh yeah, I want to do that. And then forgot about it really until it come to like years later into leaving school. Then it was just one of my friends was going to, he told me, kept it secret because he didn't want people to take the mickey out of him in terms of like, I'm going to the careers office to join the Navy.
Yeah.
And he was like, and I was like, oh, I'll come over with you. It was like support. And then, got in there and they kind of pulled me in as well. And I was just like, oh, this looks all right. And then that was kind of like how my career path came about, really.
What sort of age were you when you started? Because I know
I was 16 straight from school. So a few months after I left school, got GCSEs, is like I was got a phone call because I'd been to interviews and stuff, and then like I got a phone call to say, oh, you can join in January. So the January after I left school was like I got a train to Plymouth and like and that was me in training.
Oh wow, right. So it is a long military career, straight in. That's it.
Oh yeah, I was straight, but it suited me. So for me, I look at that as my education. I don't look at school as like my education. I think the way my personality is and what I like is like that was kind of perfect, to be honest.
And what was it? Because I've never been through the army. It was something I did look at. My grandfather, who I never actually met, my dad's side, he was an RSM.
Okay.
So it was something that was always in the back of my head. You know what I mean? But then obviously with the life path I took and the accident, it just, I just went a bit off a tangent, but this isn't about me today. But so the military always held, like, I think I wanted some structure in my life, is what I'm trying to say. So that was
I think that can be, again, is like I look back at things now and like the work that I do and kind of like and knowing how we work as humans is like, it was that I didn't have, I suppose, that much structure, and I was kind of, I think it was the best thing for me because it's like I would have been just a bit of a loose cannon. So it's like it's that, I think it's that desire, like a young boy desire for structure and kind of and discipline and being around other guys and stuff, and the adventure side of it for me, to be honest, because like they show me the videos in the careers office, I'm like, oh, that looks great. So it's like the travel and all of that, it was just like that was what kind of drew me into.
Is that what you think was missing in the education system for you then? The structure, the discipline, but also the adventure side of it and the creativity?
I couldn't tell you really. It's just like, I mean, like in school, it's just like not everybody learns the same, do they? Not everybody's like is matches to that. So trying to get me to sit down in like in a classroom like all day and learn stuff that I have zero interest in was just not going to happen. It was just not. So obviously I was disruptive. So I just disrupt to like entertain myself. So it was just that. I was like, I just liked things that were more physical. Like I like to like action and doing things that are physical, not sitting down listening to somebody talk about stuff that's like I have zero interest in.
Did you do a lot of sports at school?
Funny enough, not so much. As like I would say I was generally kind of like naturally fit and athletic, but it's like I played football. That was kind of it. That's the only thing I really did. It was played football.
So not really into the sports. Just didn't like the education. I can understand that, seeing kids in school now. Well, personal experience as well. It's just that it's not the normal environment for children to be in, is it? Sat down, stare at boards.
No, it's definitely is like it's and you know, we're not all the same, and like we learn in different ways, and we're drawn to different things, and we're attracted to different things and different subjects and how we learn. So it was just like you know, years later understanding that, I was just like, oh, it just wasn't that I was like stupid or a bad kid. It was just like that I was just like I actually felt quite pleased that it's just like, oh yeah, I just understood that it was actually, for me, it was crap. And it's like I had zero interest in it. So it's like when I found, like when I went into the Navy and I was a chef, it's just like I was like, that was I loved that. So it was I put full commitment into that because it's like it was something I was interested in. So I was just like, yeah, so for me that was a good environment because it was just it was the opposite of school, but it was actually stuff I cared about and was interested in.
Okay, so can you just walk me through that? So when you go into like the army to have the, you know, you go into the office and they're chatting with you, do they give you different vocational options then when you're sat there? They say to you, you can go into this, or is it a matter when you get on the boat?
No.
Start your training.
So when you go into the like careers office, is like, to be honest with you, what they actually do, I think what they do is if they're short of people in certain branches,
yeah,
in whatever you're going to join, is like they'll kind of push those on you.
Oh, okay.
But it's like they tried to it was like this really, they used to call it operation mechanic, but it's not actually a mechanic. It's just like, it's basically the worst job in the Navy. Is just like you're basically you become a glorified cleaner, where you kind of like clean the flats on the ships, the passageways and stuff, and like you go and do watches in the operations room, but it's just like boring. So, and the other one was chef, and because I kind of liked cooking at school, it kind of just made sense. And obviously watched Under Siege, Steven Seagal was a chef, so it's like obviously you got to do that.
Yeah, had to follow in his footsteps. And the training, just briefly, so obviously you're going in as a chef, but you go through all the same training as everybody else. Do you go to like with the Navy, do you go to like a military school first to get trained in what I would call the combat side of things, or is it literally they chuck you on a boat and you get all your training on the boat?
No, so you do basic training in Plymouth. There's a training base in Plymouth, so you do like 8 weeks basic training. It's all the same for everybody, no matter what you do, no matter what your job is. And then after that you go into your trade training, however long that is. Mine was Jesus, I can't even remember now. Like, let's say 6 months to the chef. So we did like might even been less than that. So we did what would take you 2 years at a college to do like NVQ in catering and hospitality.
Yeah.
We did it in like a quarter of the time in the Navy. So it's like, you know, fast, intensive training. And then you get sent off. I got sent off to a base to continuation training for a year, to like, you know, cooking and like getting more training in that. And before I ended up joining the ship.
Okay, and when you're, I'm just really intrigued with all this.
Sure.
And when you're doing that as well, do you still get all the fitness training and stuff, or does that drop off?
No, it's like people think everyone in the military is really fit. They're not. It's just like, to be honest with you, like I would say most are like pretty, like probably fat and like really unfit. It was like so. But for me, I think because I'm drawn to like the fitness too. I loved that in training. I was like, it was just like, and again, quite naturally being athletic, it was like I adapted to that, and I became a fitness freak from being in training. But like, you know, after that, a lot of people, you have to have an annual fitness test.
Right.
And how many people would fail that would be ridiculous. So it's you do the bleep test or a 1.5 mile run.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that would drop out on like level 3 or 4 of the bleep test, which is, you know, you're not doing it's not that intense. Would be pathetic, to be honest. So it's like, for me, it's like you didn't have to have high standards, but for me, my mentality was just like, you know, it's partly if you're the reason for being strong and fitness is because like if there's a fire on the ship or there's a flood, which, you know, there has been, and you have to drag somebody out, or someone's got to drag me out of a compartment, is like, and you're basically a fat lazy bastard who's unfit, is just like, that's not good enough in terms of the job that you've chosen to do. No, so that's where it's like, you know, it's like, but you could, well, could you say those things now, like, you know, things on like social media where people get insensitive about it? But I look at things from a bit of that more, I'd say extreme and intense perspective, but it's just like, but it's that can happen. Those things can happen, just obviously in different environments in different ways. But it's like, for me, that's like a value.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit of a self-value as well, isn't it? I always think it's you know, the body, I suppose my attitude on it is the body's got to last you a long period of time. I'd prefer mine to be in good nick and stand me well, rather than have to keep working on losing weight, or if you just keep chipping away at it every day.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the discipline as well, isn't it? But also like a big part of like mental health as well, I think, like the body. But also as a guy, as I look at this from like a man, a lot, obviously I'm surrounded mostly by men. There's obviously women in the Navy too, but it's just like the men I wanted to be around. It's almost like, in a way, it's like, could I trust you to have my back if something, you know, went wrong? It's like you learn that a lot in like the way that you train in the military. Is just like you automatically have that thing of just like, you know, who you would want around you if something kicked off or something went wrong, you know. So it's like it's that, and that's actually a lot. It's an important values that I think I bring into men's work as well.
Yeah, zombie apocalypse people, I call that. So when the zombie apocalypse kicks off, whose house are you going to go to first?
Yeah.
Who's got the most weaponry and who knows the most about bushcraft?
Yeah, who's got the most food?
Who's got the most tin food in the cupboards? Or dry packets. But first song this morning. So Glenn Frey, The Heat Is On. You're an 80s kid, aren't you?
I like all. It's just like, that's for me. Is just like, if I'm putting out in the car, I just like, I like that. That gets me. It gets me excited and gets me in the fun zone.
Go to tune.
It's Beverly Hills Cop, though, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it brings back memories for me, because a lot of my memories of films and that are 80s. I was born in the 70s, but sort of 80s were my 80s were the year. Django, if you wouldn't mind, a bit of Heat Is On, please, this morning.
Cool, you're off air.
Thank you very much. Then we don't hear the music. They obviously hear the music.
Yeah.
And then this gets recorded.
Yeah.
So the breaks, I like people to hear what people chat about in the breaks.
Okay.
And then this goes on, like I say, that's why I said do your hair this morning, because the video is on YouTube.
Well, kind of. It's wet from the pool still.
It's kind of, what time are you? I'm curious, habitually wise then, what time do you get up in the morning? Are you like a really early bird?
To be honest, I used to be really rigid with this, where it's just like, it'd be like 6:30. Probably in the last year or so, I'm more about actually like making sure I get my hours in rather than actually what time I get up. But I still like to be, I think, between 6 and 7, to be honest.
Okay, so you're quite an early bird.
Yeah, I guess I'd like that. I'm like one of those annoying people where like I'm up and I'm like, I'm good to go. I'm like up and out.
Yeah, Christmas has thrown a spanner in the works.
Yeah, even at Christmas, I'm like, it's like, I think I took a few days at Christmas where I didn't really do anything, but even then is like, it's just, it's just I like getting up early, so it's like I don't kind of throw everything out the window at Christmas. It's just like I kind of enjoy that. It's just like, if I don't train for a few days, or like on my sleep goes out the window, it's just like, I think because it's like I'm pretty good in those habit areas, is like I notice it quite quickly, and I become sensitive to it, and I feel like shit.
Yeah, yeah. The exercise is a definite one. I think that's one of the main things habitually, like you say, creating habits. Myself, I've slipped to an 8 o'clock start in the morning. It's like I think that's down to the light hours.
Maybe, yeah, come here.
Because I go to bed really early.
Yeah.
And it's I think I'm screwing myself up a little bit at the minute, if you know what I mean, because I go to bed so early and I'm getting up at like I don't tend to set an alarm clock really unless it's for the show, just to make sure I get up. But yeah, the 8 o'clock, because the sun's coming up here about 8 o'clock. So when it's get light, eyes open, out of bed.
Yeah.
Obviously in the summer it's different, isn't it? Because the sun's up a lot earlier.
It is. I find it like quite annoying in the winter because it's just like, because I like to get up early and go out. It's just like it's pitch black here. Same. It's like pitch black here at that time. So it's kind of like it's thing is, it's like how we adapt to seasons, though, isn't it? As well, a bit. It's just like winter's supposed to be for like hibernating, isn't it?
Yeah.
That
appeals to me on all levels.
Yeah. But it's like, I still like to be up and out. So it's like, but it's when it's pitch black, it's like I'm not going to go out and although I did buy a head torch the other day, so I can go out running.
Yeah, John has suggested that I get a one of these sun lamps.
Okay.
And he said, like, just still get up at 6 o'clock because through the summer I'm a 6 o'clocker.
Yeah.
As we get towards winter, it's like the sun, when the sun doesn't get up as early, neither do I. And he said, just get
30 seconds.
Thanks, Django. When you get up in the morning, just whack a sun lamp on.
Yeah.
And it'll be like you've got. And I said, I might.
It's different there, isn't it? Because it's so dark and miserable in the winter. Where here, it's like it's still really nice.
Yeah, you got something. Yeah, there's something. This is a nice day today, actually. Blue skies.
Nice.
So I love the winter if it's cold, but
10
blue
seconds.
skies. It's just the blue skies, isn't it? That's what does it really for me.
Kindasound Radio, the station for a global community.
And you're live.
And welcome back to the second part of the show this morning. So we've had a wander into Craig's early years, and now I want to get into the Navy part, because you ended up with 3 medals and on a sinking ship.
I did. That's like my motto. Is just like 3 medals and a sinking ship. No, two. What I usually say: 3 medals, 2 wars, and a sinking ship. That's
it. Yeah, I forgot the 2 wars in the middle.
There you go. Can't forget that.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to wander through that a little bit. So yeah. How did talk to me about your career then? So the chefing part of it, obviously. So then you get on the boat. What happens? You go off on tours. Do you stay harbour based? Is it? Yeah, because I don't really understand the Navy.
Okay, so I was mainly on aircraft carriers for the most part, which is like the big ones you see in Top Gun.
Yeah,
but not that big because the Yanks have massive ones. But like I liked aircraft carriers, and they tend to be like, if something kicks off, is like that's like the HQ of your fleet, so to speak. So it's just like you're going to be off doing wherever you needed to go. So my first ship I joined when I was 17, I think, is like, and my first deployment was actually supposed to be 3 months just around the Mediterranean. But we were in Malta on September 11th, 2001, which we all know what happened then. And in a CD shop, I don't know if we have those anymore, CD shops, music shop in Malta, and then like seeing on the TV just like this, these buildings. I'm not 18, I haven't got a clue what's going on. It's like I thought it was like a movie or something. It's just like these buildings on fire and like collapsing. And then it's like we were getting messages like to get back to the ship, and we got called back to the ship, everyone back to the ship, and then we got sent down to the Gulf, to the Middle East. We had special forces embarked. We had communications cut off, and kind of a bit of radio silence, so to speak. And we were kind of off and deployed down to the Middle East, where we were for 7 months during the start of the Afghan war.
Oh, okay. Can I ask you, like, emotionally, like feeling wise? I know obviously in the army they take you through a lot of exposure therapy to stuff. So, but when that kicked off, were you full of excitement or full of fear, or nonplussed around it? Was it just like, I'm on my boat, it's my job?
That's a good question. I'd probably maybe a mixture, to be honest. Again, it's like fear, excitement can be kind of like the same kind of physiological feeling, right? So it's like probably a mixture. I just don't know what's going on, but like I think because you have like because there's so many, there's like on an aircraft carrier, there's like 800 to 1,200 people. So you like you, and it's like, pardon the terrible pun, but you're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
It's like
Literally.
so it's like you're not on your own. It's like everyone else is there. There's like you feel safe and trusted. There's a lot of hierarchy, and like you get briefed and all this sort of stuff. So it's like you feel pretty good about it. It's like you end up doing a lot of training. So you end up doing a lot of war training. So the vibe changes quite a bit.
Right.
And you're doing a lot more kind of war training, and like if there's chemical attacks and like fires and suicide bombers with the boats, and like emergency stations and action stations, like a lot. So it's quite intense, and actually got to prep for like these potential things to happen. So
yeah, so a lot of drills basically while you're there. Did you see much action out there, or was it pretty much you sort of floated about just keeping an eye on things?
Yeah, so it was like because I was mostly on ships, so I was never like on land in kind of like in front line like a lot of the guys. A lot of the guys that are in obviously into the like army, marines, etc. But no, we'd basically like a troop carrier for the special forces, where we'd kind of drop them off to do their thing and then get them back on board. We did have prisoners on board once, which was quite exciting for everyone, where they kind of brought back some wounded prisoners, and in the sick bay, the medic center was kind of on guard because they had they had prisoners in there. So it's weird as well, because it's like it's some weird things. So like as an 18-year-old, so as a chef as well, you have like and a caterer, you have the big freezers on ship, like huge.
Yeah.
And in wartime, they'll get used to store bodies if needed.
Oh.
So it's just like little things like these that are just kind of like reality checks of like of how things change when you go off to like into war zones.
Yeah.
And the training and like things that like you kind of happen. So like if we had bodies, is like they'd get stored in our freezers.
So what happens to your food? Do you have, or is it a matter of store that over there and we just ignore that when we walk in and get our food?
It never happened, so it's like I have no idea, but it's just triggered a memory there of like when we were talking about that and like the prisoners and stuff. It was just like, oh yeah, it's just like when we'd if anyone kind of died, and like we'd have to store them in the freezer.
We need your freezers. Thank you. Yeah, which is interesting. So cooking on the ship then.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. What's the food like? I love food. So is it good quality food, or are you just banging out stuff for the masses?
It depends. Right. So it's like, don't forget, it's like everything's on mass. So it's just like in terms of the quality of the produce that we get, it's like I think the normal produce is like generally quite basic, but all right. But when you go abroad, because you have to use local traders when you go abroad, is this like it can actually be really good, because you have to have their local produce,
right?
Which like if you go to America is like generally really good, so you get like really quality stuff, as opposed to using the normal kind of big food supplier in the UK, where like the breakfast sausages and bacon like pretty crappy standards. And it depends who's cooking.
Right.
So you'll have teams like small watches of like, depending like on aircraft carriers, probably like four people in a watch. And it's just like, it depends who's cooking. Because it's like, some teams are like pretty crap and some are pretty good. But it's like the food's good. You'll have like steak night on a steak night on a Saturday. You'll have fish and chips on a Friday lunchtime, big Sunday roast on a Sunday. You'll have curry nights, pizza night. It can be pretty good, especially for like how many people you have to cook for, and the amount per person that you get in terms of budget to cook a day. It's like £2.30 or something. It's like you get like that's just ridiculous. But like,
is that good or bad, Craig?
It's really very, very good. It's like in terms of like for the budget of what you get to feed people is extremely good. It's ridiculously good. You never get that anywhere. And So you're talking like full fried breakfasts and like, you know, cereals and fruit. And then like lunchtime, you'd have a baguette and salad bar. You'd have omelets. You'd have whatever it is for lunch, like, you know, pie and potatoes or whatever. And it's like evening is like you get free choices of main meal in the evening, spuds, veg, desserts. So it's like it's ridiculous of what you get. But like, obviously, when you're away at sea, people like, you know, the only thing people got to moan about, and like people like to moan, is the food. So obviously, you get people moaning about the food. Sometimes it's warranted if you had someone who's really crap cooking. But the things with chefs as well is like people, they used to call the chefs in the military like the white mafia.
Right.
It's like it's like because of the chef whites. It's like don't mess with the chefs. Don't get on the wrong side of the chefs. It's like the people that control your food. So like if someone complained, is like it's not politically correct in the military. Is just like you'd probably get whacked with a metal spoon, or you'd probably get attempted to be dragged over the counter.
Right.
So yeah, don't piss off the chefs, basically.
Don't mess with the white mafia. I like
Yeah,
that.
pretty much.
I like that. So go on then, tell me about the what's it, the 3 medals and the 2?
Oh, 3 medals, 2 wars, and sinking ship.
Yeah.
All right.
So
you've already had one in terms of like my first deployment when I went to we got deployed off to Afghanistan for 7 months. Then after that is like straight after that is like my second ship. I flew out to Manila in the Philippines,
right.
Where I had one of the best nights I've ever had in my life out on the town, which was a bit mental. Is like I turned up my first day on ship. I turned up at 6 o'clock in the morning, puking at the bottom of the gangway.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, it's a good entrance.
So tell me about the night out in Manila then. You can't just wash over something like that.
It was like, you know, I was like 19. It was like the first time I'd been like properly, like I flew out of here, and I walked into the mess deck where I was staying at, and I knew one of the chefs, and he was getting changed to kind of go out with the lads. He's like, "Oh, nice, hello, mate." It's like, "Nice to see you." And he's like, "Are you coming out?" I was like, "Oh, all right." And so then just kind of quickly got changed and went out straight away. It was just mental. It's just a weird place. You have a lot of the kind of the show bars in Manila, where you get like a lot of the showgirls and dancing and karaoke. I remember like getting on stage with them and like doing some as part of their show, and like it's like, you know, get a lot of sailors out just in a lot of the bars. You get a lot of bars that are basically just full of prostitutes as well. But I'm like young and naive. I don't know this. I've never been anywhere like this before. And it's like you're going in there, and it's just like all these girls come just sitting on your table and like trying to get your drink, and like they're all trying to like, they're kind of fighting each other to kind of like just sit on your lap or sit next to you and that. And it's like, as a 19-year-old, is just
yeah, I can imagine.
I'm like, this is amazing. And it was just that it ended up being a bit of a wild night. So yeah, it was one of my memorable nights out.
And then so what happened in Manila then? What were you out there for on that carrier?
So I joined. No, this was a frigate, it's like a destroyer. So like that was HMS Nottingham, which was I was on that I joined in Manila, and it was on a world tour. So it was going all over the Far East, like Hong Kong, New Zealand, Australia, China, Vietnam, like all these, like everywhere. They're the trips that you really want. And then, and I was on it for 10 days. So we sailed the day after I joined in Manila, and I was on it for 10 days. And then we crashed into a rock just off an island, a small, tiny island. Like 300 miles from the coast of Sydney. The swell of the water picked us up and like smashed into a rock. The whole front of the ship caved in terms of the bow, where like a hole that you could walk through, and water started rushing in. I was in bed. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and it's like you feel the ship like vibrate aggressively. And I opened the curtain and looked at one of the guys, he was in the mess, and we looked at me, and he was just like, well, that didn't sound good. And then the emergency alarm went off, and then like all the guys are running into the mess deck to get changed, and then like you could just hear water go like rushing in. So we were like, oh fuck. So we kind of like we went into emergency stations and like basically stopped the ship from sinking.
How did you do that then?
So it's like where you'll have certain compartments that you'll shut up. So you'll close and the hatches in certain compartments, and like so they're like kind of airtight, watertight compartments. So it stops the water kind of flooding into different ones. And you have to put like wooden shoring up, like wooden scaffolding, so to speak, because the water will swell the bulkheads or the walls of the compartment. So you have to kind of stop them from bursting. So you have to put all this like wooden scaffolding type stuff and build structures to stop it all. You have to like pump water out. So you have like these massive pumps that you'll hook up to places that pumps water out the side of the ship. So it's like we had to, that's basically a lot of our that's again, it's where the floods training, where you get trained in like damage control. Everyone has to do that damage control training. So if something happens like that, is you know exactly what to do and you don't sink. So we stopped the ship from sinking, and then we grounded on the beach of this tiny little island that there was like 200 or 300 people lived on it. Beautiful island. And then we were there for like I think 2 or 3 weeks until they managed to get a boat out to like a towing boat that would take you off, take the ship off. So we were kind of stuck on this ship, kind of like constantly pumping water out, and then like as the chefs we were cooking like pot mess, so like using all the tinned rations because you couldn't use the electrics or anything like that. It was just like in a big huge kind of we call it a copper. It's like a huge pot basically that you use, absolutely massive, like as big as a person, that you'd cook that in. So we were eating like tinned stew for like a couple of weeks, and but it was fun as well. But then we got flown off to an RAF jet came to get us, and we got flown off to Sydney, and the crew got flown off, and they were like, well, we've got no idea what to do. So basically, go do what you want, and then be at this RAF base in Newcastle, which is just outside of Sydney, in whatever weeks or whatever time. So we ended up just having 3 months of going wild in Australia.
Nice. Sunshine. Yeah,
it was great. Yeah, I remember ringing home. My brothers were like, "You jammy little bastard," and I was just like, "Wow." So I was on a ship for 10 days. It crashed, and then I got 3 months in Australia out of it. So
bonus.
Yeah, pretty good.
And then go on. So take us into the next one then.
Okay, so after that, it was when we flew back from Australia, I joined another aircraft carrier, the Ark Royal, and
I've heard of that one actually.
Yeah, it's probably the famous one, and I joined that, and then Iraq kicked off, and then we got sent. I think we were away for like 4 months, and we were carrying Marines, so we were like we changed from like being the kind of an aircraft carrier for jets, and we're more for like choppers, helicopters, and carrying like troops and Marines down to like drop the Marines off on land in Iraq. And that was probably the more intense one, because we were at sea for like 110 days. We were like in what you call defense watches, which is you work 8 hours on, 8 hours off,
right?
Like continuously, 7 days a week, for like 90 something days of that. And like again, you're on like a big tin can in the middle of the sea, so you're not getting much sunlight. You're doing loads of war training again, and like it was like really pretty intense. And in that one as well, we had some deaths on the ship where our helicopter crews, they were doing some practice night flying, and we had the two helicopters go off with the helicopter crews, and they ended up for some reason as like they collided into each other, and you basically blew up, and like everyone died, and we had to send the divers out to go and kind of at night to go diving and retrieve the bodies from the sea. So that was pretty dark for everybody on the ship at that point, because we've been at sea for quite a while already. So it's kind of it's one of those where it's the morale, you use like something I strongly believe in is just like, and I use it in men's work too, is just like is camaraderie. It's just like the humor and like keeping morale is just like the most important thing when you kind of in those kind of intense and dark kind of experiences. It's like why the military is known for their kind of like a bit of sick, dark sense of humor, because it's like you have to, because otherwise you'd go mental.
Do you have people on board, Craig? If so, like, I don't know, a mental health specialist of some description. So if anybody is struggling, or is it literally just your peers around you?
Yeah, it's kind of like really, it's like, and again, as far as I was aware at the time, it was just it's just shit you get on with,
You just get on with it,
yeah,
very much. Going to the next song then. So Escape, Rupert Holmes. Anything particular you like about this one?
It's because when I left the military, I went on like a 6-month adventure around the world before I started work again, and it was a song that was like it's a song that's anchored for me of like me camper vanning around New Zealand for a month, and like this song was just like playing all the time. So every time I hear it, it just reminds me of cruising around New Zealand doing loads of cool shit. So it's like it's attached to experiences, and like is quite emotional for me, because it was like a really awesome period.
Nice. Django, if you wouldn't mind, can we escape, please?
Cool, you're off air.
I've had some really, really cool experiences then, being able to go. It's the backpacking thing. It's one thing I've always wanted to do, just limited myself due to my mental state with the disability.
Yeah, it was more of like where it was like I wanted to celebrate, because I've done 13 years in the Navy. So I was just like, you know what, I'm like, before I do any job, is like I'm going on a fucking trip to celebrate. And it's like with my girlfriend at the time, it was just like, okay, look, we're going to do 3 months in Australia, because I always loved Australia. And then it was just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to do longer? So she went to see if she could get a sabbatical from work, and she managed to get a 6-month sabbatical. So I was like, well, we're going away for 6 months then. So I started like planning this massive trip to like Cape Town, Thailand, Singapore, New Zealand, Fiji, Australia, Los Angeles, somewhere else, like doing like loads of cool shit, like shark diving in Cape Town, great white shark diving.
Can I just stop you there? How was that? Because that's on my bucket list.
That was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
That was like that was pretty cool.
Did you do it in the cage or in the cylindrical?
In a cage.
Perspex.
In the cage. It's still pretty dangerous in the cave, because it's like the bars are like kind of like this far apart. So it's like because when we kind of go like dunking down into the cave, and the sharks are coming close, is just like it's your leg can go through it. So you have to be like, you still have to be pretty careful doing it.
I've seen those disastrous ones as well, where some of the sharks have actually gone into the cage, and then there's been a big tussle, and the shark has come out the top of the cage.
Yeah, I've seen that.
It's like, I wouldn't mind. Have you ever seen those cylindrical perspex ones?
No,
have you not seen them?
Is it the ones that they drop right down into the water and they go?
You're in a big perspex like cylinder. This is why I like them, because there's nothing between you and you've got no bars, so you're just literally. But the sharks, obviously, if they hit them, they just skid off them.
Yeah.
Because I'm hoping they make them out of extremely good polycarbonate of some description that means they're not going to get broken. But I've seen those. That fascinates me, because that's more like I'm here with you sort of thing, rather than bars. And I've also seen the free divers who go down and actually dive with them.
Yeah, I think it's like if you know that like behavior of animals, it's like it's actually, I think that's quite easy to do if you've trained in it, because it's
Yeah,
like you can tell like when it's like when a shark's actually is like they're being territorial, if they're, or
yeah,
if they're like just checking you out, or if you need to like get out of the way and
yeah, yeah.
move. It's just like is I think they if they can read all of that, then it's like I guess it's pretty safe.
Yeah, I saw a fascinating one the other day, documentary on tiger sharks. Can't remember where it was. I'm not very good at remembering some information unless I've seen it 35 times. But wherever it was, this guy, he'd been diving with these tiger sharks for years and years and years. And there was one big female tiger shark that would always come over and see him. And she was like a dog. She'd want stroking. She'd want to be tickled. And she'd literally come over and like nudge him to stroke him. And he hadn't been there for something like 3 years for whatever reason. And he gets back in the water and he goes down. Everyone's going, I don't think this is a good idea. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of them down there, and there's bull sharks about. And he gets down and just sits on the seabed. And then this massive tiger shark just appeared out of it. She was huge. And you could hear him in his thing going, it's her. She's back. I can't remember what her name was. And she literally just swam straight over to him and just bonked her head into him. And he was like tickling her nose and that. And he was like, see, they're not the predators you think they are. She actually remembered who he was, and because they'd had a bond since she was younger. And I just thought it was absolutely lovely.
20 seconds.
Try that with like a great white. Do you know what I mean? That I didn't know. Yeah, come here, let me. Because
I
scuba diving. I love to touch fish, so I'm a bit of a nightmare. I'm like, oh, I'll touch that one, but no, it's gonna, give you.
Going back on air.
Kindasound, tuning in for change.
And you're live.
And welcome back again to Kindasound this morning on Reality Bites with my guest Craig Barlow. Craig, I want to wander now. We've gone through your army career, and you said you left and then you went backpacking. That was a conversation we've just had in the break. Yeah. So how did you then get into the coaching that you do now?
So I think like when I left, it was like I think it's this thing of service. So obviously I was like in the services, as you would say, but I really liked being of that kind of role of being of service and kind of helping. And I think because I struggled as well, because it was like not in my environment, the only environment I knew that I was used to, and kind of struggling and depressed and kind of like the kind of identity crisis and all this sort of stuff when I left was very challenging. But it was weird as well, because it's like I'm not supposed to struggle with this. It's like, I'm super mentally strong and like, been in the military for so long. But it's when I started to do more into like more the inner work side of things, because it's like it was like, being honest, it was pretty scary, because you don't know what's going on in terms of like internally and like emotionally, and just not really connected to that was very difficult. So I ended up getting my own mentors. Like I didn't like, for some reason I never thought like therapy route for me. So it was just like I got just some I went into coaching and getting mentors, and like doing more of the inner work side of things, and like then you start going into things like childhood stuff, and like and beliefs and relationship with parents and emotions and all this sort of stuff, and that kind of set me off, and I was fascinated by it. So and this is all while I was a personal trainer when I left. So I was working as a personal trainer.
Right.
Didn't really like that, to be honest. I found it boring. So for the 2 years I was doing that, I was training in more body work, so more of the nervous system and the brain, and working with pain and how pain shows up in the body, and being able to like work with that through the nervous system and kinesiology and movement. Okay. And then realized with the training I was doing for that, it's actually, if someone's got emotional stuff going on when they come to you, like a pain or in their body, is just like, that's like, you need to address that first. And it's like, so I was like, okay, then so basically just go to emotions first. That's what I thought. So that's when I really started to, it's like, go into the emotional aspects of the body, and like how important emotions are, even in terms of pain and how they show up and the effects they have on the body. It's like I will refer to that when I work with guys as like it's like learning a new language to
Massively.
to get in more in touch and like navigate emotions and understand your emotions is like it's like learning a new language. It's like it's not logical, so don't try and use your man logic or rationality on it because it won't work. You have to actually feel it, and all these combinations of all my skills kind of came in, and like I was doing some coaching, you know, and like I ended up packing my bags and driving off to Malaga, where I was for 3.5 years before Ibiza, and it was kind of like it was actually around lockdown, where when I was in lockdown, I kind of decided that it was actually specifically actually working with men because it was like one of those no-brainers, you know. Is like I have these discussions a lot with clients sometimes as well. It's like where people trying to find their purpose and all this, and like you know exactly what they want to do in that, and like, but sometimes I feel it's like it's right in front of your face and it's so obvious. So I look back now, like look at all of my experience of like the military and the training that I did, and like and just the mentality and like the discipline and like all the underlying things that kind of like are skills and like really important foundations, and then all of the stuff that I've done around like you know training and like movement and the nervous system and the brain and the emotions and all of this, and then like kind of just putting it all, extracting like and squeezing like as many skills as I possibly had into like into then like being able to bring that to be able to work with men.
I find it quite fascinating as well. It's just the emotional stuff. I suppose it is a lot of people I meet who now work in coaching or you know, even the therapy side of things. It's normally because they've been through something themselves, which has then unpacked it and sent them on their journey. And then they go like, wow, I didn't know this information, because it's all the stuff we're not taught at school. And unless you have parents that are sort of in that environment that teach you about your emotions, your beliefs, how you pick all this stuff up, you know, like you say, with the pain especially, emotional context, the body. I've got a fascinating book, Metaphysical Anatomy. Honestly, Craig, this is just, it's like gold, that thing. And anybody who comes in, if they've got something going on, I go, right, let me just have a look. And then it gives you like all the emotions that run under stuff. And it always ties in to something physical that's happening in the body, or something that's, you know, what they're running now, the physicality comes from something they've not dealt with in the past. There's always some sort of tie in, like you say, the emotions. So do you find it a challenge getting men connected to their emotions, or do you have certain ways?
No, not really. To be honest with you, I don't. I think because I think there's a lot of things with this, but really it's just like I think like what a lot of men are conditioned with as well, where it's, you know, it's like you know it's weak to have emotions, and it's like, you know, it's emasculating, it's not manly, all this shit, which is obviously stupid. But it's also as well where I see a lot of guys that are kind of like too much in their emotions, and it's like they, you know, it's like I look at it as like, okay, I like kind of like what you might call traditional masculine things, and like kind of like, you know, even like kind of like bravado things. I love all that shit, you know. I come from the military background, is like I love all of that. That's not wrong, but like this is something, you know, is like it's that gets judged and criticized a lot. But I'm also like highly emotional and sensitive as well. But like I have both sides of that. So it's like what you tend to see is like you get guys that are either too closed off and like in bravado and like no kind of emotional or feeling connection, or you get a lot of guys that are kind of like too much in emotions and feelings and kind of like, you know, no kind of balls or spine. And it's like that's the black and white of like, you're either one of those, and it's like there's a third one where you can have all of that kind of mixed together, you know, in like in the best way. But that actually takes work, because a lot of that is from stuff that you never got taught as a man, like, and it's just like they're things you didn't get as a child in terms of your development, is like being around men and having leadership and guidance from, you know, in terms of like to cultivate your masculine side, your masculinity side, because generally it's, as you're a young boy, it's more feminine influence and from your mum. And it's like, so, and because we're kind of have a lot of the absent father culture and like, men not being present and kind of like, because it's a bit of a generational thing now, is like that's missing. So it's like a lot of it I see is like men actually need a lot of masculine leadership, guidance, and direction for the most part, to keep it kind of super simple. But within that, there's a lot of childhood stuff. Like relationships is a big area that I use as a tool, not really a massive focus point, but a tool, because as a man, and what I found, like I came from the military, right, in terms of a high gold standard of leadership. And like, I loved it in that I could lead and like with men and stuff, but like in relationships is where I kind of struggled. And so it's like, and I see this is generally a giveaway. You can hide, like, so I work with high performers a lot. So like as a man, high performing man, you can hide in your work and in your business very, very easily. You can be really great in that area and lead in that area and be fantastic, but you can't hide shit in your intimate relationships. And it's like, so it's the place that's like is required for you to kind of lead in maybe a different way than we're taught as men to lead. And it's very challenging, because it actually is like it's going to poke a lot of your wounds, your kind of like deeper emotional stuff. It's like your cracks and holes that you have in your kind of like development, and it's like you can't hide from them. And it's like one of the big problems is like men don't have the tools to actually the understanding maybe, or even the tools to actually navigate through that and deal with that. So it's like it's this thing of like, something's wrong with me, or that I'm weak, I can't show certain parts of myself as a man. And like a lot of men are very disconnected from their masculinity, from their emotions, from their body, from like having some balls and spine as well. It's just like there's a lot of those areas that men are kind of very alien to, and like don't really know who they are, can be super successful but actually a bit unhappy and don't know what their needs are, struggle with relationships, they don't have good connections with men, because it's like there's a subconscious thing of not trusting other men and having other men to actually be able to even talk about this stuff with, let alone men that are actually able to help you work with it. So that's why I work a lot, I'd say, on in the areas of like leadership and masculinity, but also the relationship piece has to be in there, because it will show you everything. You can't
it's
hide.
finding, I mean, I see you because I watch a lot of your stuff. I can't remember how long we were random connection, maybe a year or so ago, and I just thought I like coaches. I like to see what other coaches do, and then obviously I do work with men, but not often, so it's nice to find people who do. And I find it's like you create balance is the way I look at it. You round people back into themselves, so they find the balance in the different areas and aspects of their personality and their emotions and their leadership skills. And that's why I think I love watching what you do. So Craig, we're right at the end. This goes so quick on a Sunday morning. For people to want to work with you, find out more about you, how do they contact you? So where's the best place to find you?
Probably you can find me on social media at Instagram, the Craig Barlow, but probably email. So it's leadingmengroup@gmail.com. It's probably the best, really. But like again, on social media, Facebook, Craig Barlow, Instagram, the Craig Barlow.
I'll drag all your links up and put them on the videos, and I know Django will share them out as well, because this goes out on podcasts and stuff.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having me on.
Wish I had a little bit more time, because it's been a fascinating conversation. And I'm sure I'll have you back at some point in the future. So I just want to say thank you to the listeners as well. Thank you, Django, for producing as always. And if you could just play us out with Open My Eyes by Rival Sons, please.
Yeah.
Cool, you're off air.